Hello, Grand Strand. This is Richard Florzak, the private chef to the stars, and welcome back to Talking About Food. Remember, it's the only local review show on the Grand Strand that talks specifically about restaurants, food trucks, festivals, and farmers markets. I love interviewing local chefs and local business owners. And remember, contrary to a restaurant chef, I cooked in a home just like most of you folks. I always say the only difference between you, the home cook, and me, the private chef, I got a check for what I did. And once in a while, I have some of my celebrity friends on, and whether celebrity or not, the topic is always food. It's great because I can talk to who I want to talk to, and hopefully that translates into listeners. And I discovered my friend who's sitting before me here, Geoff Blount, owner and chef of Leve Bakery in Conway. My dear friend Liz Calloway told me about him, said, I've got to have him on the show. And we had a telephone conversation. I think it lasted about 45 minutes to an hour. We hit it off right from the start. So, Geoff of Leve Bakery, welcome to Talking About Food.
Awesome. This is great.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you're here. It's like I said earlier that I'm in a position right now. And like I said, I hope it translates into listeners, but I get to talk to who I want to talk to and ask the questions I want to ask. And,
yeah, exactly.
You know, most listeners are interested in your journey, how you got from where you started to where you are now.
Yeah, the story.
My favorite is, and I like to jump into it as soon as possible. I like to just get our hands dirty here and talk about what it is that you do. But give the listeners a little bit about your journey here.
Well, I am a product of technical college systems in the world of culinary schools. I went to Central Piedmont Community College back in Charlotte back in the day after finding out that theater school wasn't what I wanted. And not acting. I was back of the house, light, sound.
Technical. Oh, really?
Yeah. And I ended up, it was the end of the season and everything was done. The guy that was running this company where we were doing props and stuff, he's like, you're all laid off. And it's like the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh, wow.
And I look in the newspaper and sure enough, there's a place that's hiring all staff. They took out like a quarter page or whatever in the newspaper. I was like, ooh, well, they're hiring everybody. I've bussed tables before. I've washed dishes. I've waited tables. I can do that, whatever until the next gig comes up. And I ended up at a Daryl's 1775 Daryl's restaurant.
Oh, wow.
On Albemarle Road as literally a host. Mm-hmm. And then, but I would always be the first one cut. I think it's because I'm not pretty. I'm a guy. I don't have boobs. So they would keep the girls there and then they would let me go free. But I think there was also a little side thing there. I think the chef was paying the general manager like, hey, can you cut the guy loose? Because then when he goes upstairs, I'll just give him his chef jacket and he'd come down and he can wash dishes or whatever,
Yeah.
So he'd always offer me a pig buck. It was like an employee incentive, like money that you could use to buy beer or whatever after your shift. And I ended up washing dishes. And on Wednesday morning,
hold on a second. Did you ever own a restaurant?
Yeah, I did. I had a place. I had a bakery in Denver, North Carolina called Sugar Buzz.
Right.
Way down the road afterwards.
Yeah. Did it have a host or hostess?
No.
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
Because it wasn't until I owned a restaurant myself that I realized how important a host and hostess can be.
And how they look and the fact that they don't have their cell phone in their face.
Right.
And that they're actually paying attention to you when you walk in the door.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, good luck with that this day and age. It's a little difficult.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
Keep going.
But I ended up my way in the kitchen. And then, of course, as we all see in the industry, attrition in the kitchen. This guy leaves, that guy leaves, and the pantry guy. And the next thing I know, I'm on pantry.
Yeah.
And the executive chef goes, you see those pictures up there? When the ticket comes up, make it look like the picture and you'll be fine. And maybe it's just because I'm a little type A, a little organized. My food was always coming up in the window and the plates looked like the pictures. And he was like, have you ever thought of going to culinary school? And I went, you got a school for this? And he's like, oh, yeah. the local tech school downtown, it's $100. I'm like, I'm still trying to, here's $100.
Wow.
Go register for classes.
No kidding.
And I registered for my first set of classes.
Was he the chef? Was he the owner?
He was at that point, he was the corporate regional chef, kitchen manager, whatever.
Okay.
He was in charge of the 3 that were in town.
Right.
There,
but thought enough of you to do that.
Doug Philippi. He was, what a great guy. I mean, I think he's since passed, but I ran into him 15 years later in Durham.
I
ran into him 15 years later in Durham because, a lot of restaurants put the name of the chef and the owner or the general manager around the door. And I happened to see a Daryl's and I thought, I'm going to go in. And he was there. And I was like, oh my God, Doug's here. And I reach in my pocket and I take $100.
No.
I sit at the bar and I hand it to him.
No kidding.
And he's like, can I help you? And I was like, yeah, because I asked for the chef to come out and I handed him this $100 and he goes, can I help you? I'm like, yeah, I just needed to make sure you got that. I owe you that. And he's like, who are you? I'm like, Geoff. And that was my nickname back then. He's like, oh my God, do you need a job?
Oh, wow.
No. I'm the executive pastry chef at the time I was in Raleigh as the executive pastry chef at the Carolina Country Club over on Glenwood. And I was like, no, I do not need a job. I'm just fine, chef. But here, I wanted to make sure I paid you back.
What a fantastic story.
Great stuff. He was one of those guys that was very passionate about his employees. And he was looking. He was looking to see who his next assistant kitchen manager was going to be. He saw beyond. But this is like on the cusp. And you being in the industry too, I watched the demise of restaurants. Mm-hmm. And when I say the demise, I remember I would unload the trucks on Wednesday and all the staff would come and unload the truck and stuff. It'd be 1,000 pieces off of a PYA Monarch truck, And I remember the first day seeing a case of 4 1-gallon signature Daryl's ranch dressing. And I was like, well, why is the ranch dressing coming in a bucket? We make that. And he went, oh, no, we're going to start. And the next week, cakes were showing up. And I literally watched as restaurants stopped getting rid of, we stopped making things.
Yeah.
We started seeing buckets of stuff being made. And it was all in the sense of, oh, well, it's going to save money and it's going to be, and then additives and all other stuff. But I literally always tell everyone, I'm like, I learned so much back then. I watched the world change in big restaurants.
So then how do you end up getting to where you are today? Did you go to culinary school?
I went to culinary school.
Yeah.
I graduated. Back then, we didn't have baking and pastry and culinary. You did it all, and then you kind of figured out where you wanted to be. And my last semester of culinary school, I was working for a chef, Catherine Rabb. Catherine's on Providence, and she also owned a couple other places. And I was her pantry guy, and her pastry chef was going on vacation. And I was at a local ACF meeting, and she said, oh, God, I got such a hard week. And my instructor is sitting across from me. Oh, you should ask Geoff to just cover. He can go into the middle. He's young. He can go into the middle of the night. Well, I mean, he's already working pantry. And then he can stay and work his pantry shift. And I'm looking at George going, careful, dude. I mean, I have a life here, and I've still got to finish my school, And so I ended up being her baker for that week. And I fell in love with it.
You were confident enough at that stage in your life. Well, you know what? Anyway, you were confident.
I've been around. My mom was a catering cook, chef. Yeah. I had been around enough, and it took me. So it's a 2-year program. It took me almost 5 years to finish that program.
Yeah.
But I had worked everywhere. I fell in love with baking, and there's something to be said for being given the opportunity to be the first and the last bite. The bread on the table. Yeah. Oh, and the pastry in your mouth.
Yes.
There's something to be said for having the first word and the last word. You have an opportunity to open up the performance and to close the performance.
Which I've said in a number of different episodes that it is very much like a Broadway play. So how did you end up with Leve Bakery?
So I taught for 20 years in the technical college system. I was with Central Piedmont. I taught alongside of some of my mentors. And then I was brought on board by HGTC to come in and teach and draw up the very first baking and pastry arts degree for the entire state of South Carolina, and helped open up the culinary school here in the Grand Strand. And then I left in May of 22. And it's always kind of been in the back of my head that my retirement plan would be like a little bread bakery, where you would bake bread and show up at farmers markets and sell some loaves and then just go home and then, go to sleep or whatever, and just kind of ride off into the sunset. I don't know. One or two people making bread, beautiful bread that you love. And the opportunity came knocking.
And you're doing that now, far from retirement age. It's going to be a slow stroll.
Slow stroll into retirement. We started with 45 loaves, and the next week we were at 60, and last week we did 750 loaves, and we're 2 years in.
Very nice.
And we're super excited about farmers market season.
I want to talk about starters.
Okay.
What are the differences? And if you could explain for listeners, because it's so often misunderstood, why it's called sourdough starter. I know this is probably boring to you, but it's interesting to me, and I hope it will be to the listeners.
Well, and I tell everybody...
Excuse me, because I dealt with this to the point I want to put a gun to my head with my pizza dough.
The journey.
Right? I had an upscale, an authentic Neapolitan wood-fired pizza, and that dough drove me nuts.
Yeah. First things first, you got to have a scale. Everything has to be scaled off. You can't be using measuring cups. It's huge, because when we get into the world of starters and sourdough bread and stuff, we're constantly talking about ratios.
Yeah.
1-1-1 makes it more sour. 1-2-2, a little less sour. 1-3-3, a little less sour. 1-4-4, and you're like 1-1-1-1. What does 1-1-4 mean?
Yeah.
So one part being your starter that you have that's in your fridge or on your counter, however you're handling it. And then, so for instance, if I have 50 grams of starter and I feed it 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water, and I mix that up. Now, you have to realize that the wild yeast inside of a starter has one purpose, and that is to eat sugar.
Sugar, right.
But we didn't put any sugar in.
Right.
So the sugar comes from the flour, but that's what's unique about wild yeast, is that it's programmed to only eat the sugars from the flour. So now you need to have good, clean flour that's preferably unbromated, unbleached, unenriched, so that it can, all the other crap's out of the way, and the yeast can just do what it's meant to do. Now, obviously, if I feed it 1-1-1, it's going to eat faster. Which means if it eats faster, it has more lactic and acetic acids, which makes it more sour, and there's less sugar there. So in other words, when he eats and it's all of a sudden it's gone.
Right.
And then, of course, some of those acids start turning, and then you end up with that little bit of moisture on top. And so now you have 1-1-1, super sour, but it's ready very quickly, right? Like that's the advantage. You can have it ready in a couple hours.
Yeah.
1-2-2, a little less sour, but it's only because it just takes longer for it to eat, because it has to eat through two.
So I think that's a great explanation, and correct me if I'm wrong. That is the reason why. I mean, it's called sourdough starter, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything you make with it is sourdough.
Correct.
Yeah, and
that's not everything is sour.
Exactly, and that's where the confusion comes in.
We get a lot of folks that come in and they're...
What are the different results? I mean, you talk about, and I learned this, I wouldn't say the hard way, but doing a lot of research
the journey
before I open up, because I had a wood-fired pizza oven in my home. I built it, and that's what got me into that mess of having a restaurant. But is doing a cold fermentation.
Yeah.
Right. And it wasn't until I really sunk my teeth into that I realized I was going to get the results that I needed. And if you could explain that.
Yeah. So cold fermenting. So our job when we're making bread, or whether it's pizza dough or flatbread or whatever, the definition is to evoke flavor from the grain. And this is something that I think gets lost amongst a lot of bakers. You're there to evoke flavor from the grain. And the only way you can do that is through fermentation. The only way you can evoke a lot of flavor is for it to be extended. And the only way to extend it 9 times out of 10 is to not get it too warm and probably use the refrigerator.
Yeah.
And the refrigerator, like in our shop, we can program it anywhere from 39 all the way up to 46 degrees. And we find that if I stick a dough that I made and was on the floor for 6 hours, and I say on the floor, that doesn't mean actually on the floor I'm walking on. It's on the table. So it's the, floor or fridge. So it's in the bus tub for about 6 hours, and then we pre-shape our portions and we do our final stitch fold shape. And we put it in the Banneton. And if I put it in a 39-degree refrigerator, I get this perfect, after 24 hours, it's like it's filled up the Banneton perfectly. It looks nice. If I put it in a 46-degree refrigerator, I end up with almost over fermented. That's only 7 degrees in the refrigerator.
Yeah.
But we didn't know that when we went into this. You start to learn all these little tiny nuances. And that's why we call it the journey all the time. Like, you start to learn. And then you go to a place and you learn. But then when you get to your home, it doesn't work. Well, that's because your home is different than that place, which is different than that person. It's like saying I bake my bread at 350 degrees, and then they write it down and they go home and they bake it at 350 and it doesn't work. Your oven's different. It's different.
I have dealt with questions like that, hundreds of them.
Yeah,
you gave me this recipe.
You gave me this recipe.
And it doesn't work. And what you just explained, I think, will be very clear to the listeners, because most often for the home baker, especially when they're starting, is you'll read the recipe and it says wait until it doubles in size. Well, you're going to get you're going to get some results, but it's not going to be as scientific as what you're doing. If you could explain, when you were just saying, well, if you had the rise at 39 degrees and then you did the same thing with 47 degrees, if you were to bake those products, what do the results look like in each one?
Oh, yeah. So if it's over fermented, sometimes when you go and score it, it'll actually flatten out. It's lost some of its structure because the yeast and the enzymes, the proteins that's released, start to eat some of that gluten structure. And once that gluten structure has been eaten, it starts, obviously CO2 starts to leak out, and you start to lose some of your structure that you've shaped. So if it's over fermented, you might end up with what we call pancaked. It's a little flat.
Yeah.
Still makes for great bread, and it's more sour.
Why is it more sour?
Because it's released more acids, acetic and lactic acid. And it's actually easier to digest on your stomach because those proteins have eaten up some of the gluten and the gliadin, which are the two that people have allergies and stuff with when they talk about gluten intolerance. The glutenin being the one that causes bloat, and the gliadin is the one that causes like rash and stuff like that. So you end up with a better digestible loaf. However, it's not as tall and fluffy.
Yeah.
So maybe it makes a shorter sandwich.
Right.
But we've actually tested at our shop. We took a loaf and we left it in the fridge for 7 days. 7 days we left it. And then when we baked it, we tested it with one of those Glutox test swab things.
I don't know what that is.
You actually take a bit of the product. A lot of folks that are celiac carry these pocket testers with them, and you can actually take the product and break it down right inside the restaurant, and you shake it up. And when you test it, it looks like a pregnancy test.
Oh, wow.
And of course, the first time we did it, we were like, so is it a boy or a girl? And we were like, well, so it actually tested under the FDA's standards for what is considered gluten-free.
Wow. That is now, priceless.
Priceless, but at the same time, think about this as a celiac. The FDA says anything below 20 parts per million is considered gluten-free. The FDA states that anything that tests below 20 parts per million is gluten-free.
Wow.
And a celiac is like shaking in their shoes because 1 part per million can send a celiac into, shock.
Wow.
So you have to be very, very careful. Now, for us as a company, we would never, ever claim that we're gluten-free. We tell people all the time, we're gluten-friendly. If you're intolerant, come try a loaf of our bread. We have a lot of folks that come in and eat our bread and say it's the first time they've been able to stomach bread in 10 years or whatever. And that's all from a whole nother world. Because like I said, when I went to culinary school, I watched the death of sourdough. And over the past 20, 40 years, I've watched the growth of gluten intolerance.
Which, very interesting. Very interesting.
I think if we all think about it for a moment,
yeah,
when we killed one, we brought on the other.
Yeah, which tends to happen. I remember in the, I was talking about this in the last episode, the fat-free craze that happened, 20 years ago. And I was explaining it got so crazy that you would go into grocery stores and there would be a whole aisle of fat-free things. But what people don't realize is when you take something out, you have to put something back in. And at that point, it was sugar.
It was sugar.
Yeah. This is a great segue. You and I, we had this conversation on the phone, and you mentioned the reason why bread baking, we'll say, what wasn't sexy until the lockdown. Tell the listeners why you think it has become popular.
COVID came, locked us down. We couldn't get flour. We couldn't get yeast. We couldn't get some stuff. We had plenty of time on our hands. My God, we were all sitting, climbing the walls. It settled us all down. It gave us something to do. We got all day. What are you in a hurry for? Let's just make some sourdough bread. Because if you wanted bread, you had to make it because you couldn't get it. There were issues on numerous parts of bread has all these different ingredients, at least commercial bread does. So where do you get the yeast from? Where do you get the sugar from? Can you get flour? All the stuff was missing, and then all of a sudden, all the YouTubers and all the Pinterest and, I'm making sourdough at home. And it became like, we've got some of the pictures in our shop. If customers come by our shop and see it, there's pictures on the back wall. We call them the Pinterest, the sexy shots of bread, where the crumb is cracked open and the grin is showing the bread. And it just looks sexy.
Yeah.
That was gone. Like nobody was doing any fancy bread like that. Maybe some places over in Europe, maybe a couple places out north, maybe a couple places out west. But these were all leftovers from people from Europe. Would you agree? I mean, like in San Francisco.
Absolutely. But here's where I don't necessarily think it's a disagreement. I think they're probably, both of our positions on this probably meld together.
Oh, yeah.
I think that the reason why it wasn't popular prior to the lockdown is because it really takes a lot of talent to do what you folks do. Yeah. Because I'll tell you, especially with the
other T word, time.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll tell you, with the influx of, the cooking channels and everything, anything other than baking, I know I'm going to get attacked for this, but it is my opinion that most of that you can kind of, if you've got a little sense of the kitchen, you can find your way. Oh, yeah. And with the influx of the cooking channels, I'm glad it has a lot of positive factors.
At least for cooking again.
But not with baking. No. Baking is pastry is a whole other animal. And from the time I did go to culinary school, but I did it piecemeal. I took, some here, some there, spent a lot of time. I studied in Hong Kong and blah, 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 blah. Whenever I ran into pastry people or saw pictures of pastry and knew what was involved in it, I always felt intimidated by that group of people.
I had students like you as my friends in culinary school, and I don't know why. I was like, it's just what? You just got to scale stuff. I hate scaling stuff.
Yeah.
If it doesn't taste right, you get to add a pinch of salt and some pepper and maybe a little acid, and it's fixed. And it's done.
And I think not for everybody, but that is in my opinion,
it's intimidating.
It's a very insecure reaction to what you folks do.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are your plans now? Obviously, you've got this fantastic place called Leve Bakery in Conway. Grow the business.
We're growing. And a lot of people keep telling us, because we're in a business park. I mean, you drove there.
Which is another thing. I have to interrupt you for a second. It was the coolest flipping thing when I saw where you were located, because 15 years ago, when I got the idea to open Flame Pizzeria in Los Angeles, my wife said, "What are you thinking? Like, what kind of place?" And I said, "You know what? And this is before it became popular." I said, "You know what I'd really like? An industrial park."
Yeah.
He goes, "You mean like just a building in an industrial? I said, yes. And what about the signage? And I said, a neon sign that says pizza. She goes, you're nuts.
Yeah.
Because you're nuts. Well, halfway into the journey of Flame Pizzeria, every, industrial park, they were popping up restaurants and stuff. So that is the coolest thing. I love that about your place.
Well, and when we first did it, first of all, we started with Georgetown farmers markets, the growers market in Georgetown.
Were you still baking at the location that you're in
so
now?
There's a little bit more of a side story about that.
Can we tell it?
Yeah, not a problem. But we needed a base. We needed a home.
Of course.
Because we didn't want to do bread in our homes. Chef Audrey, her house, same thing. She lived in Loris. Myself, I have cats, dogs, and there's a lot of people out there that make bread in their home and sell it on their front porch through Facebook Marketplace and this, that, and the other. And, you can come get this sourdough here and that sourdough. And that's fine and dandy. But we wanted to be in a legitimate facility that had no dogs, no animals, no nothing, just have our space. And it was an old tattoo parlor.
Cool.
And
cool.
We cleaned it all out.
I would hope so.
Yeah. And we got a small mixer and a small table and a small little oven. When we first started this, we weren't taking a paycheck. For the first year and a half, we didn't take paychecks. We just poured everything back into it. And eventually we got a 3-deck stack oven from means we can bake 18 loaves on stone with steam every 30 minutes.
So these are steam ovens.
Steam ovens, yeah. We slowly grew in that space, and eventually one day we just started taking sledgehammers to walls and removing walls. And then we opened up retail, and then we started classes at night. We do classes.
How do people find out about your classes?
Everything is on our Facebook page.
They find you on Facebook, and they can join you for one of your terrific classes. Off the wall question here.
Okay.
What is your favorite pizza in the Grand Strand?
Ooh, currently, Antos.
I've heard about. They're in Conway, yeah?
They're in Conway, Roman style. Just
explain what Roman style is.
I don't even know what it means. All I know is it's good.
Yeah.
They talk. He's got the water system. I'm not fully convinced on the water system.
I am so glad you said that.
I'm not fully sold on the water system.
I 100% agree with you on that.
I think the biggest one, is exactly what you talked about earlier. Cold fermentation.
Yeah. Slow rise.
Let the fridge do it. Develop some flavor. Develop some DNA of stretch and gluten and everything. Let it slowly do everything it needs to do in the refrigerator 24 hours in advance. And I've always been a firm believer, even when I was at the culinary school, we make dough and we let it sit in the fridge for 24 hours, already pre-shaped. Like I'll take dough right out of the mixer, scale it, shape it, oil it, tray it, and put it in the fridge.
Yeah.
And let that sit for 24 to 48 hours. And then I'll do one of two things. I'm going to use it or I'm going to freeze it.
At that stage.
Freeze the dough at that stage.
Wow,
and
that's
then
interesting.
Thaw it out and use it.
Yeah.
And it works great either way. But at least you've got flavor, like you did with your Neapolitan.
Yeah.
You spent the time.
Yeah.
It's not just crust.
I did it for 9 years. My hero was, I don't know if you've ever heard of him, was Chris Bianco of Bianco's Pizzeria.
I've heard Bianco.
In Italy. in Phoenix, but been there a number of times. And I just tried to emulate his crust all the time, and I just couldn't do it. And had you and I had this conversation 15 years ago, I would have been able to emulate it. Okay, another off-the-wall question. What is the dish that you love that you'd be embarrassed to admit to another chef? And I'll tell you one of mine, so you don't think I'm just pulling your leg. Okay. I love hamburger helper lasagna, and I'm not ashamed to say it.
You don't have to mac and cheese out of a box.
Well, I just now was the first time, because I figured listeners are getting tired of hearing me say that mine was Velveeta mac and cheese with julienne pepperoni in it.
Ooh. I've done this.
Ooh, says the expert baker. I just love it.
I've done this.
Yeah.
I've actually, you grab whatever you grab. It's been a late day. You grab whatever meat you've got in the sandwich drawer, and you julienne it up and you toss it into some Velveeta mac and cheese. I will say sometimes I'm guilty of, I'll grab a spoonful of whatever queso blanco dip might be in the fridge, just to give it a little more oomph. I guess I don't know the word, and sometimes I'll sprinkle like some fresh chives over the top of it and mix it all in, and I just sit in front of the television and just veg out.
How
and there's nothing wrong
good
with
is
that.
that?
Yeah, there's some people always think that chefs eat extraordinarily well, and sometimes,
and we do sometimes.
Oh yeah, but there are times where if you looked at my grocery cart, you'd probably.
Sometimes I'm pushing my grocery cart through the store, and I'm thinking to myself, I hope people don't know me. The private chef to the stars got like 6 boxes of Velveeta in there.
Yeah, well.
Once again, if you can just tell the listeners before we sign off where you're located, what are your specialties and your classes?
So Leve Bakery is located at the corner of Daytona and Pocono Street
in Conway. I've been there. It's
really close to Coastal Carolina University and the bowling alley that's over there. So I tell people, you're not going into downtown Conway. It's more on the Carolina Forest side. We're open Tuesday through Saturday, 9 to 2. Tuesday through Friday, you get your basic common breads, cheesecake, plain croissant or chocolate croissant are usually available in the mornings early. But Saturdays, we roll out big time. Like on Saturdays, we have 18 varieties of different kinds of croissant, all sourdough based. The line starts at 8:30 outside the door.
Wow, that's good.
The doors open at 9. There's 2 people there. It goes really fast. Don't let the line freak you out. But if you want the selection, you get there early to get what you want. Our menu is actually available on Saturday mornings on a live video feed. So if you want it, you can follow us on Facebook. I do a live video and I walk from the outside by the pond. And I walk everybody in and I talk them through the day and what we got going on, something special. Of course, we have pasta as well. We have sourdough pasta.
Oh, wow.
We have sourdough pizza dough. That's in our freezer case. We've got about 16 to 17 different flavors of sourdough bread each day. And then the case has all different kinds of sourdough discard brownies, blondies, cookies, and then there are cheesecakes. We basically spend the entire week gearing up for Saturday.
Wow.
That is our big day.
Yeah.
And of course, farmers market season starts April 1st. We'll be under the bridge in Conway. We'll be in Georgetown. We'll be at North Myrtle Beach on Fridays. We'll be at Surfside on Tuesdays with our breads.
Yeah.
So you can find us at your local farmers market. And then look us up on our Facebook page. Currently, we have no classes available. We're not going to hold classes at least for the month of April and May because those are the first 2 months of farmers market season. Last year, this time, we didn't have retail doing the numbers that it's doing now. I don't want to short our customers, and I don't want to short my learners.
Right.
But the last thing they need is to get the class, and I'm all burned out and tired and exhausted, and now they end up with half an experience.
Yeah.
So we know we're going to take April and May off, kind of see where we are, and then we'll start posting classes up again.
If people are interested in the class part of it, they're going to have to wait until a few months.
Message us, get on there.
See what your
definitely
schedule
come by
is.
the shop. You should definitely come by because that's where we have classes at anyway.
So, Chef Geoff, you talk about how busy you are. Your bakery is obviously growing, and we're all happy for that. And that you have to sort of put the brakes on for a couple of months about classes, the classes. But how do you then deal with McClellanville? That's quite a ways from here, but you still go down there every week.
We go to McClellanville every single Saturday, as long as the weather is permitting.
Do you sell a lot down there?
Not a lot. I sell 45 loaves.
So why go?
If I drive another 22 miles to McClellanville and sell 45 loaves, good, awesome. But
that's not why you go.
That's not why I go anymore. We are woven into their weekly part of their world. When I pull into the driveway of McClellanville in front of the middle school, there's a crowd of people standing there. They're all waiting for the bread man.
Yeah.
And they all just, the bread man's here, the bread man's here. And I'm usually late, wonderful. By the way. And they're all standing there talking and getting caught up with what happened this week. Oh, did you hear Miss Pat fell? She was gardening, da-da-da-da-da. And meantime, Pat's not there that day, but her next door neighbor's going to pick her bread up.
Oh, wow.
This is McClellanville. When I pull in, everybody kind of parts the sea. So my van goes through. They all clamor in behind me. I open up the back of the van. Sometimes customers come and help me set the tables up real quick. And they all stand in line. It's 35, 40 people deep. And it's a hug, a kiss on the cheek from an old lady, grandma, kind of, that kind of gives me, thank you so much for driving out here and seeing us today. We are woven into their table, their dinner table. They're Ohana, their family.
What does that mean?
Ohana means family, and you don't leave anybody behind. Yeah. And they're part of our family, and we're part of theirs.
Yeah.
And so it means so much. I've watched some of these kids that have been coming to the farmers markets. I always sneak a couple of cookies from the bakery in my apron. The only thing I could do more in McClellanville would be to bring other products, but we make bread. Yeah. And we love to serve them our bread, and they love the fact that we still come and see them.
Yeah. What jumped out at me about what you just said and encompasses everything about you is when you said, we don't leave anybody behind. And folks, if that doesn't tell you everything about the man sitting in front of me, nothing will. He doesn't leave anybody behind. This is top of the line. Geoff Blount of Leve Bakery. What an absolute pleasure having you on the show. And your bakery's, it's already growing in popularity, but I hope it goes off the charts. Geoff, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
And I hope you will come back.
Oh, definitely. We got more stuff to talk about.
You bet. We just hit the tip of the iceberg. I can tell you that. Yep. Thank you so much. And welcome back to Talking About Food. Man, I'm telling you, that previous guest made me really hungry. That was Leve Bakery. Geoff Blount, owner and chef. Man, I'm telling you, when it comes to carbs. But I've got just as interesting a guest in the studio today. And his name is Fernando Medina, and he is the owner of the food truck Papi Car. It is a Puerto Rican flavor food truck. And I dig food trucks because they are the new and happening thing. They let chefs really do what they want to do. They don't have to follow trends. They can create them. And that's always been my motto. I don't follow trends. I try to create them. So anyway, Fernando Medina, welcome to Talking About Food.
Thank you for having me today.
Oh, it's an absolute honor. You guys work so hard, and you have your lovely wife, Ginny, with us. You guys have been married 30 years, I hear?
30 years, yes.
Okay, and Ginny lets Fernando do the talking, which is pretty admirable for somebody who's been married 30 years. My wife wouldn't allow that.
It's my opportunity to shine today.
Well, you've been married for 30 years, so that certainly is shining. So tell the listeners, Fernando, how did you get started? What's your background in the food world?
I started literally when I was 16, working in a restaurant back in Pennsylvania as a dishwasher, and I instantly fell in love with food. Once you saw the person and you fell in love with it, that's literally what happened to me.
Yeah, so Ginny and food.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Do you remember when you started out washing dishes? Do you remember, like watching what the kitchen was doing and preparing, and you found an interest in that right away?
Instantly. The moment I walked into that restaurant as a dishwasher, and every day you get a chance, slows down, you get a chance to see them.
Right.
Forming and cooking, whatever they were cooking. I was just like, what are you doing? What is that? Why are you doing that?
What kind of restaurant was it?
At the time, it was an American restaurant.
What kind of food did they serve?
Prime ribs and pastas and steaks.
And at that point, how long had you been in the United States?
At that point, I was here 2 years.
2 years. So you got this job as dishwasher, immediately loved the whole food scene. And what, they allowed you to move up the ladder? You started cooking? How did that work?
They did. They gave me the opportunity. Do you want to prep? And I said, absolutely. I do want to prep. I want to learn how to make the salads, how you make the soups.
Yeah.
Everything in that place was made from scratch. The soups, the salads, the pastas, everything. They literally, and that's when I was like, I just fell in love with it immediately.
And what was the name of the restaurant?
It was in Pennsylvania and Wyoming. It was called the YR Club.
YR Club.
The Young Republican Club.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that is so cool.
After 30 years, just like my wife, those are the two things that I love besides our kids.
Yeah.
But those are the two things that I'm still in love. I still want to participate in it. And the fact that I'm doing it with her, it's my blessing in a way.
That's fantastic. That's a lot to be said about both of you. Restaurant, food prep work is not an easy thing. It's high pressure, and it can get the best of all of us. So, okay, so then you're on the line. What happens after that?
After that, I worked there for a couple of years. Then after that, we decided to move away. So we moved to Florida. And again, started finding over there's a different cuisine down in Florida. You know that there's a lot of Cubans, a lot of Dominicans,
right?
A lot of our comfort food.
Yeah.
So I started applying those.
Right.
But in reality, it was my wife who's more versatile in the Caribbean food than me.
Yeah.
So she's the brains of the operation when it comes to the heavy cooking, the rices that we do, the soups that we do, the beans that we do. That's her department.
Is that right? Boy, do I wish you were willing to talk into the microphone. You're not. Jenny, move up close to the microphone. Where's your background in cooking? Is it self-taught or?
No, absolutely not. My background in cooking is actually stemmed from my grandmother. I went to school in Puerto Rico. As a small child, you're always in the kitchen, and you sit up on the counter, and you take instruction, and then you learn as you go through your life. And our whole family was centered in the kitchen.
Right.
So it's just how we grew up. It's like second nature.
Yeah, you grow up around the table if you're lucky.
Yep.
Around the dinner table. So you do most of the, like your husband said, the heavier stuff, the beans, the rice. What else do you put together?
I also went to school for pastries.
Really?
So I do make a little bit of pastries. But most of the things that we make are cultural stuff that is starting to disappear. The food is, like I said, more homey.
Yeah.
And it's more to your heart.
Right.
And we sometimes have to drive up to Fayetteville to get our ingredients because they don't sell them here. So, like, for example, we use ajicitos, which is a small sweet pepper.
Mm-hmm.
And they only sell that over there. We also use a different cilantro. It's a flat leaf cilantro, and that they don't have that here. So we need to get all those ingredients because those are ingredients of what make the food. The younger generation just doesn't want to take the time to do the art of making this kind of food.
Classically, I mean, the way you learned it from your grandmother.
And that's what, when we came to start this whole restaurant thing, the idea of it is, and until the day we don't do it anymore, the idea of it is to go back and try to make food with the ingredients that, they used to be used, that people don't look for anymore,
right.
that people forget.
Yeah.
If you ever got a chance and went to the truck and you were standing inside the truck and you gave some of the things that we make to an older person, I mean, you could see their eyes just light up.
Yes.
And they're like, oh my goodness, I haven't had this in 10, 15 years. And that's what we're looking for.
Can you tell for the listeners just a basic, what is the difference between Puerto Rican, we'll say, and Mexican food?
Traditionally, Mexicans cook with a lot of corn, a lot of heavier spices.
Mm-hmm.
So their concept is more to the spicy palate, while in Puerto Rico or the Caribbean, it's more of the savory and the sweetness part of the cooking.
Yeah.
So we set ourselves apart. Is their food great? Absolutely. I love Mexican food.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I love our food. I love our culture. And it's not known as widely as Mexican food it is.
Yeah. I grew up in New Jersey before I moved to Los Angeles. And I had a number of Puerto Rican friends. And I've experienced some pretty traditional Puerto Rican food. But I wanted you to explain that. So you're saying it's similar to Cuban?
It is. It is pretty much similar to Cuban or Dominican. What we change could be maybe that in one of our meals, we might add potatoes while they may add something else, but somewhat it's pretty familiar.
Right.
All in the Caribbean.
Yeah, so it's slightly nuanced. Yeah. Why a food truck?
why the food truck? First of all, to say thank you, number one, to David Owens and everybody at Owens Liquor.
Owens Liquors, yeah.
David gave us the opportunity to run the food truck. And the thing is, like, people ask, why not get into a brick and mortar? In all honesty, in us trying to do what we want to do and to get to our end goal, we need to micromanage everything that happens.
Yeah.
And inside of a restaurant, that is almost 100% not possible all the time.
How long have you been in business?
Over a year and a half.
Year and a half.
Yeah, in the Pawleys area.
Right.
We thought we were going to do a lot less, and we actually did not. It was just, we've been doing a little bit better, and now that spring is coming in, we know we're going to get crushed in that space.
Right.
I think to myself, the community has really taken us in. They come out and they check up on us, and I even had for example, Amy. Amy and
Myrtle Beach foodie babe. I love her. She's coming on.
Yes.
Next week. I don't remember. Go ahead.
So yeah, she and a bunch of people in the community have come out to help us, and very smart, very loving. She's helped us out a lot, and they bring a lot of traffic.
That's good.
They bring a lot of traffic, and they bring a lot of very positive traffic.
Is it easy to find places to set up your business? Because I know some of the complaints about food trucks and food trailers is they're not allowed everywhere. Is it hard for you to find places to set up?
Not in our case, because we can't move our truck. It's stationary because we have city water, we have the sewer, we have grease traps, so we don't need to move it anywhere.
Yeah. And where is it exactly?
It is right behind Owens Liquor Store.
Yeah, I knew it. What are the most popular dishes that you folks serve?
It's always going to be our Cuban sandwich. It's our number one seller.
Yeah.
Next, follow closely by our stuffed potato balls.
Oh my God! Explain what that is.
That is our traditional back from Puerto Rico.
This is Puerto Rican.
That's Puerto Rican food. Yes, so it's literally mashed potatoes.
Right.
We do it from scratch. We don't buy the box potatoes because we want to give people what we ate. 75. What our grandparents ate when they were kids.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way. We didn't want to compromise the integrity, or we didn't want to Americanize the food.
Right.
We wanted to give you what we ate back at home. Our grandparents, our parents, us, and now our kids are enjoying the same food. That's what we wanted to give people.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Now, what is your favorite, Ginny?
For me, it's going to be the Cuban sandwich, just because that is my grandmother's, the pork. It's not the sandwich that means to me. It's the pork. The pork is slow roasted for 14 hours at 250. And it just, you don't do anything to it. You just leave it there, let it do its thing. And most of the time it comes out pretty good.
Is it not marinated with something? Spices?
It is marinated. Let's say brine.
Can you tell us what some of that is? I mean, I don't want to, ask you to tell, secrets that you don't want to talk about. But if you can mention...
We first the one key to our food is going to be bay leaf. Mm-hmm. That is literally like the secret ingredient, I guess. But you have your regular Spanish seasonings, and you have the pepper, all that good stuff. But what makes a really good Cuban sandwich is you brine it in orange juice.
I knew it. I know, because I remember how they do a whole pork leg in the Cuban community.
Yes.
Explain what that is, actually.
So what you're gonna brine it in, like you want to say garlic, bay leaves, your seasonings, salt, obviously pepper, bay leaves, oranges, lemons, limes, and then after it's brining all that stuff, you put that all. Take it out, and then you put it in the roaster, and you leave it alone.
Yeah.
Leave it alone. And just it comes out really, really nice. You don't mess with it or anything. And just the way it comes out of the roaster, that's the same way it's going to go in the Cuban.
So this particular item, the Cuban sandwich, is not only the most popular, but it's your favorite as well.
It's my favorite.
What about you, Fernando?
I'm the appetizer guy.
Yeah?
I love our appetizers.
And so what's the biggest appetizer seller?
It's going to be the stuffed potato balls, followed closely by empanadas. We're using that term because it's for the people in America to understand, but that's not how we call it in
What do you call it?
Pastelillos.
Back to the potato. What is it stuffed with?
It's stuffed with beef.
And how's that beef cooked?
That beef is part of her cuisine. That's when she comes in and She does what she does to the beef, seasons it, cooks it. And then, of course, we have to cool it down completely.
Right.
So that we can apply it and stuff the potato.
And then how do you prepare that whole potato once it's stuffed?
And then once it's done, we put a coating of flour and then we deep fry it.
Killing me.
And that is it.
You're absolutely killing me here. This sounds so good.
We cannot keep up enough of them. Doesn't matter how many I make. It doesn't matter. I can make 3 dozens. It'll be gone in a day.
So this is when it comes together.
Yeah.
You have your wife making the beef part of it. You're making the potato and stuffing it together. And then it comes into this beautiful crescendo, just like an orchestra. So that's the most popular one?
Those 2, yeah.
And the empanada. Explain to the listeners how the outside is made.
So it's literally a flour base.
Right. Not corn.
No, not corn.
Not corn.
We do not use corn. We use corn for other things, but for our food, we do not use corn like tortillas. This is flour based. And then we add other ingredients and then it becomes a dough. Not saying a pizza dough, but close to a pizza dough.
Yeah.
And then we cool it down completely. And that things we have to, like if it was a piece of bread that we're playing with it until we get the shape that we want, the consistency that we want. Then once it's done, we have to let it sit on top of room temperature for a day. Then we have to let that, take it out, then put it in the refrigerator for another day or 2 so that it is ready to be stuffed. Because if not, it'll crumble.
Wow.
So it's a process.
Yes, it is.
It's a process.
Wow. And what are the fillings?
The filling is up to whatever we want, but the main one that we sell the most is going to be the beef and cheese. Then we do second, followed by our Cuban empanadas, which is what we put in our Cuban sandwich.
Yeah.
So it's going to be your pork, your ham, your Swiss, your pickles, your mustard. Everything we put in a Cuban, we put in an empanada. And then follow along by the chicken and cheese, all made from scratch. The chicken. Everything that we do is made from scratch.
I don't know if I'm going to make it through this episode. This is unbelievable. I'm getting dizzy here. Then what would be your personal favorite? Not what sells the most. We know that they sell the most, but what is your personal favorite?
My personal favorite is going to have to be the chicken. It's a smothered chicken that she does. That's my favorite personally that I love to eat. If I eat it in a lifetime, I will be happy eating it. Not a problem.
So she makes this smothered chicken. Tell me how that's made, please.
So
even though I might pass out.
The smothered chicken is actually my grandmother's recipe.
I love this.
I remember growing up, going to her backyard and go picking up, leaves, potatoes, corn, whatever she was going to put in it. And you just take that chicken, you put it in the pot, you give it a nice sear on all sides, and then you add your tomato sauces, your carrots, your potatoes, and olives, and all your seasonings, and then you just close the pot and let it do what it does. And like 2-3 hours later, it's just like a I don't know, like it's just so homey.
Yeah, yeah. And how is that served?
It's served with rice.
Okay.
It's served atop of rice.
Wow. How long does that cook?
The rice could take...
No. I mean the chicken dish.
The chicken dish can take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. Yeah. You could do it faster. You really can. It probably could be done in an hour. But I like to slow cook it because I want everything to break apart and just be like one good bite.
Yeah. So Fernando, that's your favorite.
That's my favorite because it's old school. It's just literally every grandmother has a recipe. It might tweak it a little bit, but at the end, it's the same concept. And everybody wants that stew to simmer, literally to simmer hour after hour. The more it sits, the better it's going to taste.
Yeah.
So that's why it's my favorite.
Yeah, folks, that's about as home cooked, all natural as you can get.
What we wanted to do, it was not about money. Because we were making really good money where we were at weekly, but it was like it was personal.
It wasn't fulfilling to you.
It was not. It was definitely not. Especially knowing that I've given the food industry or hospitality 30 years, and I'm like, but we haven't done what we love.
Yeah,
we haven't done what we're passionate about, and this is literally it. This little spot, as little as it is, I know it's mighty in flavor.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's
I mean,
big flavor.
We raised 6 kids.
Wow.
And everybody's grown and married, and and it was the time.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Right now for us to do something for us. And like you said earlier, perfect. Going back to our roots, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Why not show people, food, and another thing, food is love.
Yeah.
So why not make great quality product?
I say in my opening just about every week, nothing brings people together like good food.
At all. Nothing. Nothing.
Nothing.
It's love and food, and that's what we're trying to do. And you know what? We see the community responding in a positive way.
Yeah.
Literally, everybody comes in, and they may bring a cousin, even grandparents, and the grandparents come in, and they're like, "You guys are crazy doing this the way we did it." I was like, "No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's just the love that we know we had as growing up with this food. It's not forgotten. It just needs to be remembered."
Yeah, and more and more people will remember you. That is great. Thanks a lot. They are Papa Car, Papa Car. How do people find you?
They can find us on Facebook or Instagram. I believe we're also on TikTok. A lot of people, it's word of mouth.
Yeah.
So the majority of the people that come back, they're bringing their cousins, their families. I literally had a conversation yesterday with a gentleman, and he told me that he's bringing his family without letting them know because they haven't had Puerto Rican food in years.
Wow. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That is great. But you're set up at the same place next to Owen's Liquors in Pawleys Island. Do you happen to know the address of that?
It's going to be 13707 Ocean Highway.
13707 Ocean High. Well, you'll find Papa Car there every day of the week.
We are there Wednesday through Saturday.
They don't cut corners here at Papa Car. So make sure, folks, you jump in your car and head down to Owen's Liquors, and you'll find them there parked outside. You just heard Ginny, the wife of Fernando. They both own the company, Puerto Rican Specialties, and they will drive hours to get the right ingredients. Boy, I'll tell you, that is so impressive to me. Yeah, I've said this before. I've been to a number of different culinary institutes in the country. I've traveled around the world, studied in Hong Kong. But nothing blows me away more than a place that serves authentic ethnic food. And that place is Papa Car, authentic Puerto Rican food. Heck, they were telling me off the air, they actually use pots and pans, special Puerto Rican pots and pans that were used by their grandparents. Some of them are 40 and 50 years old. When they started, they didn't even have a sign on their truck. So for all of you so-called foodies out there, you need to go to this place. Once again, Papa Car. You can find them in the parking lot of Owen's Liquors in Pawleys Island. And coming up after the break, my near visit to Cafe Vincenzo's for their pizza. I had it a couple weeks ago at my dear friend Liz Calloway's house. It was her husband Javi's birthday. And I liked it, but it was takeout, and I wanted to see what it was like in person. Ended up not going. I'll explain why after the break. So it was at Liz Calloway's house. It was her husband Javi's birthday a few weeks ago, and we were invited over. We went to a comedy club first, and it was quite a lot of fun. And we were all invited back to her house after the comedy show. And she had, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 different types of pizzas from Cafe Vincenzo's in Myrtle Beach. And of course, I was excited about that. But it was takeout. It had been sitting in the boxes for a few minutes, maybe a little longer than a few minutes. So I wasn't going to try to give a commentary on that pizza. I want to have it as soon as it comes out of the oven. It's only fair to the business. So I tasted, and it was good. It was good even, I'm not going to say it was cold. It was warm. It was lukewarm. But between you and me, don't let this go any further than the two of us. I'll eat pizza cold. But I'll eat pizza cold for breakfast. I'm not going to do a commentary about it on the show until I've had it in the restaurant as it comes out of the oven. So I was ready to head there the other day, and I went online, find out the address, and read up a little bit about the place. So I went to the history tab on their website and read a little bit about their history. It was interesting, pretty impressive. And then I started to look through the menu, but it wouldn't allow me to look through the menu. I had to start an order for pickup or delivery. Well, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to look at the different types of pizzas that they had, but it wouldn't allow me. Now, I'm not the youngest person, so I don't claim to know social media like people 20 or 30 years younger than me. But I think I have the ability to navigate a website. So I tried, going to it different ways. And each time I did, it said that I had to create an order. And I was so jazzed about trying Cafe Vincenzo's pizza at their restaurant that this really ticked me off. And I got so frustrated that I said, you know what? I ain't going. Sorry. I'm sorry. I'm not going. I can tell you that the pizza is really good. It's good pizza. I could tell just by the pizza that we had at Liz's house that night, even though it was lukewarm. But maybe I'll get there. Maybe I won't. But I still think that they've been around for a long time. They deserve more than a little bit of respect. And they're located at 7710 North Kings Highway in Myrtle Beach. So check it out. I'm sure it's worth it once you're there. But I just got so annoyed by that. Anyway, that's it. So anyway, listen, that's going to wrap up episode 18 of Talking About Food. Hope you enjoyed. We had Chef Geoff Blount on from Leve Bakery in Conway. Check it out. It is amazing. I love these types of places. They pop up in industrial parks. He's got the knowledge and the passion for what he does like not too many others. Also, make sure you check out Papa Car food truck in Pawleys Island at Owen's Liquors. They're a good one, and their heart is in it more than most. They do true, authentic, home-cooked Puerto Rican food. Speaking of home cooks, always remember this. You are your family's private chef. Thanks for listening.